G'day guys and welcome back to Supercoach with DR. Now today we've got part 3 of the Breakout Contender side and we're going to be looking at the Rucks and the forwards. So I want to say straight out before I even get into the Rucks, I'm a big advocate of the set and forget this year. I think we just go Grundy and Gawn. Keep it simple. The two big boys. But there are some people that are looking for a little bit of value to save in the Rucks and to spend a little bit else around the ground. And if you're one of those guys, then here's a couple of blokes that you might want to look at. As I said, for me, it's a big no. I'm keeping it simple, and I'm 99% certain that I'll be going Grundy and Gawn, unless one of them isn't looking cherry ripe for round one, or has a little niggle during the pre-season. I'm not looking at anyone else. But for anyone that is looking for some value outside of Grundy and Gawn, then O'Brien could be a man. So Rolly O'Brien, 23 years old, he actually debuted back in 2016, believe it or not, where he played 2 games for an average of 63. But then we didn't see him for a while. I know that Phil Walsh was a big fan of him back in 2015, had some really high hopes for him, but we know with Ruckman, they take a little bit of time. And for Rob, I think a lot of it was to do with opportunity. He always had solid form in playing the Sandful, but it wasn't until Sauce Jacobs went in early last year that he actually got his opportunity. And talk about taking the opportunity with both hands. If you didn't select him last year, I think his name might haunt you for the rest of your Supercoach days, to be honest. He started off at 136,000 and peaked at 531,000k. 18 games for an average of 95, and he actually had 4 scores above 120 plus. But what I love about Rob is his ceiling. He had 2 massive games with scores of 149 and 181. And, to do that with only 20 career games under your belt, I think it's a great sign that he'll be a big scorer in the future and in the years to come. So we know that Sauce is over at the Giants now, but I don't think that'll affect Rob at all, to be honest, because when Sauce was fit and available towards the end of last season, he simply couldn't get a game. Rob was keeping him out of the side, so he'll be the number 1 ruck at Adelaide, I think, for many, many years, and definitely one to keep an eye out for if you're looking to save a little bit of value. So Timmy English, the big beanpole from the Western Bulldogs, 22 years old now, so had a few pre-seasons, spent a bit of time in the gym, obviously, to build up his strength. Look, I think he was an early pick from memory, maybe a top 20, I'm not exactly sure on that. But what concerns me with English is still that strength. I don't think he's got the strength to compete with the real big boys. And you may say to me, and it's true, that one of his advantages may be his mobility around the ground, and he may have that over some of the stronger types. But for me, he's still 1 to 2 pre-seasons away from really hitting his peak and, really developing that core strength that I think a ruckman needs. I think, personally, he'll average anywhere from probably 85 to 95, possibly. But one thing that really concerns me when you start in English over a Gawn is that potential to lose out on match day, from week to week. I think they could be, you could be taking a loss just in that one position of 40 to 50 points a week. And the question is, what are you doing with that 250k that you're saving? Where are you investing it? Where else are you putting it into the ground? And is that going to net you more points than what you'd get by starting with Gawn? And that's what you've got to look at. If you're thinking, probably not, then don't start with him, in my opinion. I think it's pretty simple. But look, if you're looking for a little bit of value, I wouldn't, hesitate in looking at someone like an English. For me, as I said, I'm purely set and forget this year. But if you're looking for a young player that might be looking to break out, got a good role, I think number 1 ruck at the Dogs, as we said, then Tim English could be a man. Very quickly, Darcy Cameron made his way from Sydney to the Pies now. Obviously, way behind in the pecking order when he got Brodie Grundy there. But could it be an option to maybe start him as R3, with that DPP swing? And if Grundy goes down, then he might step into the role. For me, it's a no, because I think Collingwood have lots of early games and you couldn't really use him. If you're looking at a loophole at all, which I always do, I'd much prefer. I think it's Comden from North, who's $6,000 cheaper, and North have a lot of the later games. But look, he could be an option. If you're looking for a bit of strategy, pairing up Cameron and Grundy. But for me, I'd actually stay away from Cameron, even on the bench. So very quickly, just some other players to consider. Rowan Marshall, 598,700, probably already broken out last year. There's probably more to come from Rowan, but at that high starting price, I'd simply be selecting one of the two big boys. Sean Darcy's an interesting one. So obviously Big Sandy has been at Freo for years and definitely an up-and-comer. She's shown some really good signs, actually, Sean Darcy. What concerns me is his mobility to get around the ground. He's a pretty heavy-set young fella, but definitely one for the future, I think. Big Oscar, Big O from the Lions. Again, the last few names, I'm really just throwing some names out there just for a bit of discussion. I'm not really considering any of these guys. Laddams at 326, 700, ruck forward like Oscar. Sam Naismith, so he's been injured out of the side for a while. Can he take the number one mantle off Cal Sinclair? Who knows? If he can, maybe present a bit of value there at 251. And then just a couple of young fellas in Sam Hayes and Sam Draper, who I think might get some games this year and maybe some cash cows to look at. All right, so onto the forward line. We'll start off with Jade Gresham from St Kilda. Now I know he's a fan favourite among Saints supporters, and I really love him as a player as well. Question for Gresham: how much time is he going to spend in the midfield? I'm a little bit worried about him not spending a heap of time in the midfield. There's one reason why. I think he's too good as a forward. You know, we've seen what he's done, you know, as a small forward down there at the Saints, and I think he's in, you know, in the handful of, you know, best young talented forwards, particularly small forwards in the comp. Gresham. We know that he's got the skill and the potential to run through the midfield, but will he? That's our question. Last year he was a little bit of a yo-yo, so he had a pretty decent start with scores of 86, 121, 95, 85. And then he dropped off the perch a little bit. Next scores of 69, 65, 50, 45, and then a 78. Then he goes back up to 114, 105, 87, 106, back down to a 51 and a 63. He was also looking to end the year well, so a couple of scores over 100 in his last 4 games. But, Jade, where are you going to be playing? That's what I'm asking. That's my question. Similar to Toby Green, and we saw what he was able to do in the GWS midfield toward what was it, probably the last, you know, six rounds of the season. And I actually got him in last year, Toby Green, probably at that 6-week mark, and he did wonders for me. But why hadn't we had him in before? Because he's too good as a forward. He's an all-Australian forward, Green. And I think Gresham probably has the potential, you know, maybe not next year, but, you know, in the next couple of years, if he keeps, you know, playing like he is down there and just naturally improving his forward craft, I think he could be one of the elite small forwards in the comp. He could also, however, be a really, really good midfielder if he manages to go through there. So, Saints supporters, if you've got any info about what role you think Gresham's going to be playing next year, please drop a comment down below, because I've honestly got no idea. And as I said, the only reason why I'm assuming that he's not going to get a heap of mid-time is purely because of the fact that I think he's a terrific forward. But we'll have to see with Jade Gresham. 456, you know, is a bit higher than what I'd consider to be a mid-pricer. Definitely on the higher price there. But yeah, definitely one I'll keep a lookout for, and hopefully there's some Saints supporters that can give us a little bit more info on how the Gresh is going to go this year, and particularly where he's going to play. The next one we've got is a bit of an interesting one. Patrick Lipinski from the Dogs. Pretty similarly priced to Gresham. He's at 441, 500. And like Gresham, he's also got that DPP status, which I actually love. You'll notice that all the guys I've actually got here do have that status. And I think, particularly if we're looking, you know, at a breakout contender, you know, in our back lines or in our forward lines, then it's absolute gold having that DPP, because we know that some work out, some don't work out. And if it's pretty obvious early on, you know, that someone's not working out, and look, we probably need to move this bloke on, then you've got the options there. You know, do you upgrade to a premium mid? You know, do you trade him out as a forward and get a cheaper forward in, or someone that's at a similar price? Whatever you want to do, I think it gives you options, having that DPP status. And particularly, as I said, when you're looking for those breakout contenders, I think it's really, really great to have that extra, you know, I suppose security in selecting them, being able to move them on in one of two different lines. Next one I've got here is Brandon Parfitt from the Cats. Oh, sorry, before I do get to Parfitt, just talk a little bit about Lipinski. So Lipinski is an interesting one. He didn't play his first game until round 10 last season. So he played a couple of games, out for a game, came back with a really nice score. He ended up finishing up with an average of 81, which was a 22 point increase on what he averaged last year. Now, with Lipinski, at 441, again, he's at that, higher price range for a breakout contender without, giving us some really solid signs of him actually breaking out. For me, he's probably one at that price where things could go a little bit wrong if you didn't get it right. I wouldn't be willing to pay 441 for Lipinski myself. Look, there are a lot of similar players at the Bulldogs, as I've heard I'm sure you've heard before. Lots and lots of guys can play that role, of sweeping through the mid, changing up forward. But when you've got the likes of Dunkley, Bontempelli, McRae, in the midfield, I don't think there's going to be much time for Paddy there. So will he be able to lock down a role that's Supercoach friendly? For me, probably not at 441. But again, I just thought that I'd just pop his name out there as an interesting one, maybe just to keep a little bit of a track of, but probably a little bit too expensive for my liking. So back to Parfitt. I think 2020 could be Parfitt's year. And I'm really expecting him to play more midfield minutes this year. Back in 2018, he actually, which is surprising, he ranked elite in many categories as a general forward. And in 2019, didn't have the most consistent years due to a few niggles. But he offers qualities, I think, that some of the other Geelong mids don't. Number one being his defensive pressure. I think he's the best tackler at Geelong. And he's got a terrific mix of that inside-outside. He's not, one of those see ball, get ball types like lots of the other Geelong mids are. And as I said, he loves to tackle, but also loves to run and carry as well. And at 21 years old, I think he could be ready to take that next step. Tim Kelly's gone. There'll be, more opportunities in there for him now. He only averaged the 79 Supercoach points in 2019, but I expect to see a rise in that average. How much will that rise be? I'm not too sure. With our forwards, I generally look for, around that 100 average as being, a pretty solid average. Can he get to the 100? I'm not quite sure. But if he can continue to put that defensive pressure on, build that tackle count, get some clearances when he's on the inside there, I think that he could push it to, maybe 90 to a 95. Don't think he'll get to that 100, but certainly someone that excites me, Brandon Parfitt. All right, on to Jack Martin. Now at the Blues, 420,800 is what he's going to set you back. For me, Jack Martin, how to describe him, he's like that shiny package that never got delivered. And there's really two reasons why I've got him here. One's potential, and two, that he's not at Gold Coast anymore, to be quite honest. He actually reminds me a lot of Jared Brennan, an ex-Lions and actually ex-Suns player as well. They both ooze talent, but we just don't get to see it often enough. And, he missed, a large chunk of the end of last year. What was the reason for that? Probably for me, I think that Jack Martin was already out the door. And the Gold Coast coaching staff, you probably said, well, let's give some time to some of these younger guys that we see as part of our future. Obviously, Jack's probably not going to be around for much longer. So, we'll chuck him in the twos and give the opportunity to somebody else. I like him better than Lipinski. He's 20 grand cheaper. And I think that, hopefully being at a new club, what's he going to be like? I'm not too sure. I'm really not too sure. So he could turn out like a Tambling, or he could turn out like a Sean Burgoyne, and well, it might be going a bit too far. An absolute champion is Silk. But look, with Jack Martin, we know that he's got potential, but is he ever going to deliver on it? I'm not too sure, but I think he's probably got a better chance at delivering at the Blues than he did at the Suns, because obviously not was all right up there. Next player we'll have a look at is Blake Acres, now at Freo. So he spent, I think it was about 6 years at the Saints. He's a big-bodied midfielder, but he's actually born and bred in WA, Acres, so he now finds himself again surrounded by his close friends and family. I think that'd be great for his mental state as well. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that he wasn't happy at the Saints. I wouldn't have any idea, to tell you the truth. But I think it's just logical for anyone that ends up going back home close to the people that they love, that they'll be a little bit happier possibly than what they were. Now with Akers, we certainly haven't seen the best of him. He was a pretty early draft pick, and I think he's someone that still does have potential. 2014, you have an average of 51. We go look at the averages: 47, 75, 75. In 2018, an average of 88. And that's where lots of people would have thought, is now the time? Is next year now the time? Is 2019 the year of Blake Acres? But unfortunately, he only yielded an average of 70.8. So let's round it up to 71. Now, why is that? Well, the Saints didn't have a great year, firstly. Secondly, I think with Acres is that he's never really had a consistent role. And I'm no expert on St Kilda players. I don't watch a lot of the Saints, but it seems to me that you'll find him forward. You'll find him at times running through the midfield. You can find him back. It seems like he's one of those utility types. And while that's a great string to have to your bow as an AFL player, is it necessarily great for Supercoach? And for me, I don't think so. I think that having a really consistent, solid role actually correlates with consistent Supercoach scores. And look, you may say to me, look at Lockie Whitfield. He's been played all over the ground, from back, mid, forward. I suppose my response to that would be, well, that's Lockie Whitfield. We can't compare all players to a Whitfield type. He's obviously elite, very, very early draft pick. And, I think that there's certainly 18 sides in the competition that would give their left leg or left arm to have Lockie Whitfield playing for them. So, for me, Blake Acres, I think it's really great that he lands himself and finds himself at Fremantle now. I know that they've got a couple of really good. Well, we look at Fife and Mundy, as inside midfielders. Obviously, Fife, still an elite prospect. Mundy is certainly past his prime at the moment. But I think that given the fact that Mundy's actually out injured at the moment, he might be able to spend a little bit of extra time mentoring Blake Acres. And I think for us that live down here at Melbourne, we probably didn't appreciate, the type of player that Mundy's been over the last 15, whatever it's been, years. I think being in the Melbourne bubble, that we don't give him enough credit, Mundy. And look, as I said, he's not a Supercoach prospect for us this year, but I think it could work wonders for Blake Acres if you spend a little bit of time mentoring him. I think that'll actually be really, really good for him. I know that Blake Acres has also said that he's spoken to Longmuir, the coach, and he's really keen for him to play that wing role, also with a bit of, a mix of that inside midfield role as well. Now, he's playing that wing role great for Supercoach. It's not terrific. We do like to have those contested possessions. That's what gets us the points. But if he could even spend, just say, a 75-25% split, on the outside and then coming into the inside, I think that could really help to boost his average as well. And if he can play that wing role consistently, really learn that role, as well as I said, then come into the midfield and, learn off the Fifes and the Mundies and the blokes that have done it for years, then I think he could be a really good prospect at 384. 6 years in the system, I really think it's time now, Blake, to really step up, mate, and actually show us what you're capable of. I think you've had a while in the system now, and look, there's been some injuries here and there, some form slumps here and there, but we expect that, from young players. But I think coming into his 7th year now, it's really time for Blake Acres to show us what he's capable of and reward the Freo Footy Club for getting him into the club. All right, over to the next man I've got here. Now, I personally wouldn't have had Fisher in this side, but I do have a couple of good mates that are mad Carlton supporters and said, you've got to put him in. He's going to break out this year, Fisher. So I said, oh, look, and this is before I even made the team. So, Baz and Gus, this is for you guys. There's Zachy Fisher. But I've tried to mount an argument for him, fellas, but I really don't really think that I can. I'll just read you out his last month. Scores of 37, 23, 46, and 38. Nothing to write home about. His 2 best scores actually came in the first 5 weeks. So round 1, 109, you little ripper. Then down to a 68, 85 and 80, which is serviceable. 110, 89, 83. So we're not looking too bad there. But here we go, 55, 59, 49, 36, an 80, then a 47. So with Zach, the issue for me is that his low scores are really low. You know, if those low scores are more around, your 60 mark, then we could live with that. But, scrolling down, we look at scores of, things like 36, 23, 37, 38. It's absolutely abysmal. And we can't afford to carry players like that in our Supercoach sides. And look, we think that, he's certainly got the potential to improve on that. And I definitely think that he will. But at 356, although he's got the DPP status, it's a no for me on Zach Fisher. A neat little left foot. You might be able to play that wing roll with his pace, flying down there on the left-hand side. But, yeah, for me, sorry, guys. I tried my best to do what I could in regards to research and see what potential I have to break out this year. But for me, Zachy Fisher, not really one that I'm interested in too much. I'm probably actually more interested, to be honest, in Cam Polson. So Polson only played the 3 games last year, earlier on the season, for a pretty modest average. He's never been a high possession winner, but he's pretty smart around goal, and he'll be hoping for some more senior opportunities this year. Will he get them? I'm not too sure. We all know that Carlton's a team on the rise, but at under 140,000, I think he could present some good value there. And then finally, rounding off the bench, Isaac Rankin. He was a number 1 ranked player at both the 2017 and 2018 under-18 champs. He was leader for goals, goal assists, score involvements. Absolute superstar, this bloke. So, unfortunately, his body didn't allow him to get on the park at any stage last year at AFL level. But just watch out for this guy this year. I think he'll absolutely explode. He's got X Factor. He's smart. He's skillful. He's almost a full package, Rankin, in my opinion. And I think he'll be, maybe apart from Marlon Pickett in the midfield, the most popular selected rookie in Supercoach 2020. So if he gets his body right, in my opinion, he plays every game. So if he's in round 1, definitely jump on board. Should be an absolute no-brainer in our forward lines. All right, so some other players to consider. The first one, and look, could have easily had him in as a breakout. Is he a breakout contender? People are divided on that opinion. Has he already broken out? I certainly don't think so. Look, we've seen some really solid scores from Heaney over the last few years, but is solid good enough for Isaac Heaney? Does that reflect his true potential? I don't think so. I think he can really be an elite scorer if he plays in the midfield. So, Horse, what are you going to do with him? Please let us know. If you're going to unleash him in the midfield, I'll start him without a worry in the world. But if you're going to play him forward, get him into the mid, here and there, nah, I'm not going to go for him. I'm going to try to find value elsewhere. Hopefully with Buddy up and running. Now, I don't know exactly how his pre-season's tracking. To be quite honest, I haven't really paid attention to what's going on with Buddy because I'm simply not going to select him, even at his, fairly cheap starting price for what he's produced in the past. I'm not looking at Buddy at all. But Isaac Heaney, mate, that much potential. But one question, and I think we talked about, same thing with Callum Mills. Is he actually going to play in the midfield? If he does, then I'm on board without a worry. Next one, Huey Greenwood. So, move from the Crows to the Suns, obviously. Can he be that consistent, big-bodied midfielder? Now, we know that he may have not got the opportunity at the Crows due to, having your Crouch brothers, your Sloanes as well. Played a bit forward. Showed a little bit as a forward, but if we're going to select him in our Supercoach sides, then he's got to be playing that inside midfield role. It's as simple as that. If he's going to be rotating forward too often, and look, he'll have to rotate forward. That he's not going to be, well, we probably guess he's not going to be pure midfield, but I'd really like that split to be in favour of the midfield if we're going to select Hugh Greenwood this year. Not quite sure with him. We'll have to see what that role is going to be like. But, I certainly think he's someone that we should look at. At 463, again, on the higher end, I'd be much more comfortable probably, and depending on roles, paying the extra 50 for Heaney, if we say that they're both going to spend, equal time in the midfield, I'd be going with Heaney probably. All right, so the next bloke on the list, I'm actually a really, really big fan of, and I would have had him, ahead of probably Lipinski, Martin, to be quite honest, looking back. But yeah, Darcy McPherson, in my opinion, probably one of the most underrated players in the AFL. I know that's a big call, but I know that the Suns really, really rate him highly internally, which was evident in his best and fairest result. Came third in the BNF. But what really interested me is that he got the seventh most tackles in the league, and he was eighth for pressure acts. And he actually played every game last year after being upgraded from the rookie list after 2018. He managed to get a 20-point increase on those 5 games in 2018, and then boost that up, as I said, by just over 20. So he's got an elite defensive pressure, has McPherson. He's a good runner. May not be the cleanest with his disposal, but I think if he can get those tackles and continue to get average, I don't know what the averages are. Is it 6 a game, or I'm not too sure. But getting the 7th most tackles in the league, you can't ask for much more in regards to defensive pressure. And as I said, 8th in pressure acts. So Darcy McPherson, big fan of him. Definitely someone to keep an eye out for. I think he's solidified his place in the midfield due to his skill set, and definitely put him on your watch list. I certainly will be keeping a very close eye on young Darcy McPherson. I'll race through these last ones because I know I've gone over again. Joy Simpkin, forward mid from North, talented young fella, goes in pretty hard, 376,500. Cunningham from Carlton, the defensive mid, just under 350, could present some value. Zerha, geez, this guy goes in hard. Talk about Simpkin going in hard. An absolute contested tackling machine, Zerha. Ben Ainsworth, forward mid from Gold Coast at 329. Probably used more as a forward, but if he gets around that midfield, maybe worth a look. Probably not that price. So Chase Jones, I've heard really good things coming out of Adelaide. I must admit I don't know a lot about the young fella, but from what I've read on AFL.com, and it might have been on some big footy stuff, I'm not too sure. They rate him pretty highly, and I think he should get some regular senior games this year, hopefully. Ed Richards from the Doggies at 264,400 could present some value there. I think he'll at least get up to, your 350, maybe 400k, so could be used maybe more as a cash cow there. Mitch McGovern, Mitch, have you got your body right? Is your attitude right? I'm not too sure, but maybe a value pick at 263,400. And finally, LDU from North, a forward mid. Again, an early draft pick. And I think they've got some high hopes for him this year. We've talked about a little bit of competition for spots there in amongst the young guys in that midfield, but at 342,100, then, he might not be bad value there, LDU. So that's the Breakout Contender side, guys. Thanks very much for watching. I'm sure that after I posted this video, there'll be other guys that I see as I scroll down and change a team a million times, and I'll be kicking myself not for including them. So, as I said, if I've missed anybody, please let me know. Whack them down in the comments. Again, thanks very much for looking. It was, a lot of fun trying to put this team together and staying under that salary cap. I hope that I've, maybe brought up a few names that you didn't think of, either on the field or in the other players to consider section. So, thanks, guys, again. I'll be posting again shortly, probably another player review or looking at some different structures that we can use to set up our teams. But thanks very much for everything. Thanks for all the subs as well, guys, and the friendly feedback that I've got. It's been terrific. As I said, I really enjoy making these, and it's good to see that at least some people are getting a little bit out of the content. So cheers, guys. Hope the team's going well. I'll see you next time. Bye.